right? I mean,
yeah, it's not like the news.
That's fine. It's all good. Zen Plus has launched. AMD has come up from the mountain and launched Zen Plus, and it's exciting. Everything has changed. Nothing is different today.
I think you better feed the hype jar, because this is going to be a hype-free product launch. We're going to talk about the realities of Zen Plus, because the AMD hype train, it is strong. There's a lot of people on Reddit and our forums, and they're just shoveling coal 24/7 on that AMD hype train. But now it's going to meet reality.
Oh my God, it's so crazy.
So we want to talk about specific improvements over Zen, and we have about 7 that we want to talk about, and maybe just a few cons. Just a few.
Yeah, there are some downsides, not a lot, but we've only had just about a week with this CPU. We're going to have several videos for the next few days. This is the introduction. This is the executive summary, if you will, maybe, possibly, something like that. And the first thing we're going to talk about is clock speed improvements.
The most obvious.
Yeah, the most obvious. And this is in the press release, so I think this is something we probably could have talked about previously, but it's like you start to peel back the linoleum and it's like, okay, well, you say some stuff and then you get it really excited. But it's really exciting because 4.3 gigahertz and 4.2 gigahertz out of the box, maximum boost. But it is 4.3 gigahertz max boost, 3.7 gigahertz base clock for the 2600X. I'm sorry, the 2700X, and the 2600X is just 100 megahertz slower with a maximum of 4.2. The interesting thing is that they have allotted a little bit more power, 105 watts TDP for the 2700X. But those clock speed improvements translate into some pretty significant IPC gains. And that also translates into some other platform improvements around the latency.
Yeah, the latency, I'm going to have to say, I'll feed the hype jar. That's the thing to get excited about in this release.
Something we can agree on.
If you look at everything else, you want to say, is it better than Zen? Can we really recommend an upgrade? And latency is the place, I think, the rubber meets the road. That's where you really experience the improvements in Zen Plus.
Yeah, when Ryzen launched, it was definitely rough around the edges in some ways. There were definitely some performance anomalies, and we'll talk about that in the days ahead, I think. But the latency improvements change everything, literally, actually, because all of the computations, like game performance, like FPS caps and things like that, the more that you can improve the latency, not just memory, but also level 1, level 2, and level 3 cache, and AMD has improved all of that in this processor somehow. I would love to know what specifically they did. Like, can we take advantage of that on Gen 1 Ryzen? But we're seeing it in improved memory transfers, improved frame rates in games, higher end benchmarks with higher end graphics cards. I mean, the list goes on.
And if you're going to buy these top of the line CPUs, you're probably using them for gaming or using them in a professional capacity, something to do with graphics, maybe modeling, something like that. And that's why you buy them, right?
Yeah.
So you want that high-end, low-latency performance, and big improvement here.
Yeah, even with the cache latency improvements, I mean, we're talking 1 to 10 nanoseconds, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you figure the processor's got 4 billion cycles per second, a couple of nanoseconds here and there really adds up fast.
It's kind of like, when we had those revelations back in the day about hard drive speeds. It's like it really makes it feel better. When you talk about feel. And
subjectively.
Yeah.
That also leads into, I guess, thinking about maybe some of that is related to Infinity Fabric improvements and the integrated memory controllers. And so, hands down, this platform has been super exciting in terms of memory speeds. When Ryzen launched, had real trouble attaining even 3200. A lot of people never really got 3200 on the platform. 2933 is officially supported. We've got everything working all the way up to 3866 on our test motherboards.
And we used all G-Skill memory for that. That's really all we've tried. But it's tried G-Skill memory with the originals too.
Yeah.
And it couldn't really get it above 3600.
Yeah, we've got the fancy pants Samsung B-Die memory kits. We've got all the way up to DDR4 4000. So I guess the downside there is that DDR4 4000 has not worked so far in any of the boards that we've tried, but 3866 is nothing to sneeze at.
And other improvements, There are some X470 specific things, and I guess the most exciting one is do we call this Store MI or is it Store Me?
Store MI. It's machine intelligence. Although there's so many, like, I can't wait for Witness MI, like Witness Me, because I don't know, the meme. Does that count as hype?
I think Nintendo probably would be angry if you called it Store Me.
Store Me is Store Me is it's kind of funny because I think AMD has one-upped Intel in terms of like the whole accelerated storage game, and I have to explain that a little bit because Intel is really pushing Optane. And Optane is going to sell like hotcakes in the data center, but Optane for the consumer so far I don't think has made a lot of sense. And it's like, wait, why are you talking about Optane in the middle of an AMD video? That's crazy. I mean, you're going to have to, what's going on with that? Store MI is tiered storage. And what that means is you can have, big, slow spinning Rust, like 14 terabyte hard drives that the Western Digital just launched, or 6 or 8 terabyte hard drives, plus an SSD, plus a RAM cache. Well, you could use an Optane for the SSD, or you could use a regular cheap SATA SSD or whatever, and transparently, all of those storage mediums will be used to accelerate the bulk storage on your mechanical hard drive. It means that your mechanical hard drive will behave like an SSD for all of the information cached on the SSD, but you don't have to think about what is stored on the SSD versus somewhere else. And so when you're talking about insanely fast storage like an Optane, which is not really super big, you can combine those things and really get the true benefit. On the Intel platform, you've got to put the Optane with a bootable, with your boot drive or whatever. Intel's working on changing that, but it doesn't work that great. With this, it's just a piece of software. You set up the software, and it's a driver, and you configure some stuff. You don't have to reinstall. You don't have to reformat. It could be your boot drive. It could be a secondary drive. It doesn't really matter. It's a really nice piece of software that AMD has licensed and given to all X470 owners.
Yeah. It's nice that you get that. I mean, if you get the new board, then
they just give you that.
You're going to have that with all of them, that's added value for sure when you talk about upgrading or buying new here.
We'll have a separate video on that, but it's funny because our experience with Optane on Store MI is better than on the competing platform, which is kind of funny.
That's insulting. So,
is there an anti-hype jar that can I get money out for that?
You can never take back from a hype jar. And so with power, we start getting into it's like a little bit of diminishing returns here. Yeah, power management is better, but as we talked about before, the overclocking situation, if you're crazy about overclocking, then you might be a little disappointed. And when you start to overclock these chips, you really have to pour the power onto them. So you lose all that benefit.
Yeah, I'm not, the advertised safe voltage on these is still 1.45 volts. I think it's going to take 1.5 plus for you to see 4.4 gigahertz stable. At that point, the stock cooling is not going to do it. Honestly, I think we're going to have to rethink how we do overclocking on this platform. Just relaxing the thermal and power constraints and sort of letting the CPU self-manage its own frequencies worked better than explicitly setting the frequencies that the CPU was supposed to run at. So depending on your motherboard and some other parameters, the CPU is much more power efficient at default settings than the first generation Ryzen, and that's how they're squeezing so much more life out of it. But if you're looking for that 4.5 gigahertz overclock on this, I just don't think it's going to happen.
A lot of people are going to take that as a challenge. So with that in mind, now we start talking about the X470 exclusive features. And I think some people will get a little testy here. And those people are early adopters. Because, they talked about, and these you can use these CPUs on X370. But they brought some new things to the table that you might be a little bitter about if you bought those X370 boards.
Yeah, so like with the 1800X on X370, 4 gigahertz boost, you could get 4.1 gigahertz as like your little, precision, like the extended frequency range kind of thing. These bring sort of a second generation of that technology that's only going to be available on the X470 boards. You can still do the auto boosting and the auto overclocking on X370, but you're going to have a better experience on X470. Also, the dramatically improved memory situation is better, it seems like, only with the 2000 series boards and CPUs. Mixing a 2000 series CPU onto an X370 board, or bringing the 1800X onto an X470 board, it like in terms of how much better the memory controller experience is at running past 3200, it seems like the winning combination for those higher memory clocks is both a 2000 series desktop CPU and an X470 base motherboard.
And we already talked about Store MI. You're only going to get that on X470, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. But hey.
Now we have to talk about the most exciting thing. And a lot of people I don't think are going to consider this. But when it comes to this feature, you can only get this with AMD CPUs. No other CPU on the market is going to bring you out of the box RGB.
That was a close one. You just skirted the line on the hype jar. But yes, out of the box RGB this generation. It is, a lot of people bought the Ryzen 7 1700 on the last gen because it was the best value. I mean, it was 3.7 gigahertz out of the box, or 3.4 or whatever, and you could overclock it to 4 gigahertz easily. I did that myself on probably 2 or 3 1700 CPUs that I set up for friends and family, and that worked fine. These CPUs, even the highest end 2700X, you get the Wraith Spire with RGB. It works well. It's got addressable RGB. If you're not into RGB, you can totally turn that off. It does have a high and a low mode, so you can turn it on high, and it'll make more noise, but it'll give you a little bit more room for overclocking, and it has a direct copper heat pipe for cooling. So even though if RGB is not your thing, the box coolers are actually really good. They're so good that you probably don't need to buy an additional cooler.
Well, who are you talking about that RGB isn't their thing? Does that person exist? That brings us to the next topic, which is the cooler is included. That is the price benefits of Zen Plus. And the cooler is just one of those because you got to think, if you compare the 2700X to the 1800X, I think we figured out it's like 30% cheaper, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's not all. The boards are actually cheaper. And this sort of, we talked about the early adoption moniker is kind of, it's off. It's off of Zen Plus. They've grown up. They're in healthy adolescence, maybe even the teen years.
It's not been a difficult teenage years so far, I guess. I mean, we've only had it a week, but in terms of like the teething issues for first gen Ryzen, we were struggling to try to figure out a way that we could come up with it, but like how to communicate. But there are still some rough edges with Zen Plus. Don't get me wrong. I think that we're going to see BIOS updates and board vendor updates, but in terms of like the CPU experience and drivers, like Windows has been updated. The Linux kernel has good support. The Zen architecture is not new anymore. And so all of this stuff is in place to be able to support these CPUs. And so AMD's fixed some stuff on their side. They've deployed a lot of new features on their side, improved the products a whole bunch. And so that early adopter tax is basically gone at this point. If you're like, I don't have time for that, I want to buy a CPU, plug it in, and use it. Hey, guess what? There's a cooler in the box, and you're off to the races even more. And a lot of people do that.
And cheaper than not only, the Zen when it came out, but if you look at Intel alternatives at similar clock speeds, similar core counts, when you factor in the price of the board and the price of a cooler, you're probably gonna beat the price just with the CPU. But when you factor in those other things, you're gonna beat it by quite a bit.
Yeah, I think as of this video, the 2600X is about $40 cheaper than the flagship, mainstream desktop chip from Intel. But then you factor in all the other costs. And I mean, honestly, the real value king here is still the Ryzen 5 2600X, but the 2700X is as good or better than the 1800X when it launched, and that CPU launched at right around $500, and it's only $329. But the Ryzen 5 is definitely the value king, the 2600X, at least as of this video. 6 cores versus 8 cores, but you can overclock and get that extra 100 megahertz back if you want. But honestly, even the Ryzen 5 just on full auto, you're going to get great single core performance, great gaming performance at parity with Intel basically, and everything else has been pretty solid so far in our testing.
A lot of you are sitting there thinking, I'm tired of you talking. Just give me the green light. Tell me to go out and buy this. Just give me your blessing. Now, unfortunately, if you are one of those Zen adopters, we're not going to tell you to do that.
Yeah, we're definitely not. I don't think that would be responsible. It's an incremental upgrade. I mean, unless you catastrophically need the features that we've talked about, That's not going to make sense for you to upgrade. But there are a lot of people in our audience that are holding on to that i7, the Intel i7 920, or like the AMD 8350, or like the Phenom 2, or some of those older CPUs. The 2600, the 2600K, 2700K, i5 2500. Those guys, I'm speaking to you. Adopt this. This is where it's at.
Yeah, and we talked about for about 30 minutes today. You could get a 1080 Ti for $70 over retail. With the cryptos crashing, maybe you have just a short window to build your new system. And if you're one of those people who's been holding out, maybe now is the time.
If you can get a good deal on a graphics card and some RAM, now would be a good time to build a machine.
Yeah, but we're not going to say that to the existing Zen owners. Like we said, it's just not enough of an improvement. It's great, but it's not that much greater.
It is very difficult to resist the temptation to overhype this thing. It's really amazing. I really love it. Oh my God, it's amazing. Woo!
Disgusting.
And we're live for the Q&A part, because Q&A.
And no, my shirt did not change colors. You're just having a stroke.
Do you smell toast? It's maybe time to call the hospital.
So I think from all the questions I saw during that, most were, should I upgrade? Hopefully we just answered that in the last part there.
It's not pre-recorded. How is it pre-recorded? How are we responding to you if it's pre-recorded? Thank you, Brendan, for the $2, and thank you, other guy, for the $2. Charles, thank you. That was £2.
Yeah, £2.
So like the dollar's really in the crapper right now. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna take some pictures on Twitter later. But the two systems that we have set up behind me, I'm running RAID 0 on two 512 gig NVMe on the Crosshair Hero 7, and let me tell you, it's face meltingly fast. The Crosshair Hero 7 does something weird with its PCI lanes. I can run both of the NVMe at the full PCI Express 3.0 because it'll let you run the GPU at by 8, and then it'll use the other 8 lanes for peripherals, so you can have more M.2 slots connected to the CPU at PCI Express 3.0. And yeah, it's 6.5 gigabytes per second. It's crazy. Oh, have you got the Trio X box over there? Also want to show that off.
I don't think so.
Should be gaming. Oh wait, where did it go?
These are all video cards over here.
Oh yeah, it should be. Yeah, Gaming X Trio. That's the video card I want to show off. Yeah, that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So yeah, check this out. This is the MSI Gaming X Trio Geforce GTX 1080 Ti. This is the fastest GTX 1080 Ti that we have ever messed with. And we did all the testing on Ryzen. So far, we're not done with this card. This card is insane because it's over 2 gigahertz. And like running games with that, like GTA 5. We're going to have another video with some more in-depth technical details. But like GTA 5 where the game sort of breaks when you get past 140 FPS on this card. The new Ryzen chips do that because of the improved latency situation. So, woohoo! Yeah, it's amazing.
Will 8-core coffee be worthy over say this is an AMD stream? How dare you?
I love your cry at BKK20. Thank you. What does he say? Some extra cash for the hype jar. Yeah, I had to put a 20 in the hype jar to be like, this is really a lot of fun.
My favorite thing about the hype jar is, it's a cashless society, and we're guilty like everybody else. We couldn't find a lot of change, so there's pennies in the hype jar for just a little bit of hype. If you just, there's zero tolerance for hype. If you hype a little bit, you got to put a penny in.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything we didn't cover? I mean, we figured every other channel has got every other benchmark and permutation of benchmark imaginable.
There was one question about the 2700X overclock. We kind of touched on that. It doesn't overclock well.
No. 4.4 with just crazy voltage is the best that I was able to do, like with crazy voltage and cooling. It almost seems like the overclock curve on this one is worse than the previous generation, but you have better clocks out of the box.
Question about ECC RAM. There's going to be a video about that.
Nathan Lowery, $2.99. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, ECC is going to be on the Linux channel. So if you're not subscribed to the Linux channel, be sure to check that out because we're going to have the Fedora test and the ECC test on there. And yeah, you'll just have to wait and see. There come the downvotes. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Some of the questions are clearly staged. Why would we just put it in the thing?
Yeah, did you not see the there was a thread on the Level 1 Text forum where it's like, hey, what are the questions? And so
2700 overclocks as well as the 2700X. We've only got the 2700X.
Yeah, we don't know. That's probably going to be an Amazon order for us, so it would probably be a couple of days to get that in. But honestly, as I'm like the 2700 non-X is still 4.1 gigahertz on its max boost. So, And the only other thing that I probably should clarify is you get XFR2 on all AM4 platforms, but the precision boost to overdrive is like that plus a little bit more, and that's an X470 thing. In case that wasn't clear.
2700X over 1300. So if you watch the little thing, you might have to go back and watch the beginning. We talked about not upgrading from Zen, but the R3 was maybe the one that you like if you really want a nice video card to pair with it, maybe.
So if you've got a B350 motherboard too, the 2700 might be a recommendation over the 2700X or the 2600X, just because some B350 boards, the extra power required by the 2700X is not the best situation. You also, on an older motherboard, the memory situation has not been great.
Factory overclock. Oh, I missed the rest of that one.
Bob Flanders, did you do any IOMMU testing? Yes, I did. That will be on the Linux channel video as well. It's nothing bad, but not really any dramatic improvements either.
Yeah, we didn't include it in our list of things simply because basically the same. A lot of stuff is basically the same.
Yeah.
That's the sort of the conclusion. So if you didn't see the first 16 minutes of this stream, and you go back and watch it, that's everything we considered to be different enough over the original Zen to talk about.
Andrew says, as cool as this is, I'm waiting on Threadripper Plus, just not sure this is worth it over 5930K. If they come out with a 4.3 gigahertz 16-core Threadripper, like two 2700Xs, I will be so happy. Like, you have no idea how I will be giddy. I will just be giggling like a schoolgirl because I'm really, really happy with my Threadripper system. And I've confirmed with a couple of different people inside AMD and some kernel developers that they're fixing the last of the bugs there, and we've got some kernel patches. So Threadripper on Linux at this point, if you run the patches, is a great experience.
They say audio went lower when we switched. I don't think we can crank it much more than we've got it all the way up here.
I might be able to.
So somebody asks, is the original Zen a good value for gaming? I think the 5 and the 7, especially if the price drops, you could certainly get away with that if you don't care about any of those new features we talked about. Too Good, he donates $3.14 for his Hype Jar contribution.
3.14.
If you're overhyping, you must give to the Hype Jar.
If you are religiously checking Reddit/RAMD, you might be a fanboy. And that's dangerous. You guys need to not get it's an exciting product. And it really honestly is genuinely exciting. Look at, I don't want to call Intel super, Intel is maximizing their business, I don't know, what would you call that? Like the business, the maximizing their business, squeezing every dollar out of the market. I don't know what that's called.
Their boot on the throat of the industry.
AMD, I can breathe again. It's like, what is this oxygen? It's like, I don't have this thing on my throat anymore. It's like, I can breathe.
I bought the 1600X as the new Ryzen Any Better. You clearly didn't watch the first 15 minutes. So as soon as this is over, review that. Someone asked about cooling. There was an all-in-one cooler tested for the overclock. Most of what we did was with the air coolers. Nitrogen and all that nonsense, no. We're not doing that.
No. It was surprising actually. The stock coolers, like given the limited overclock ability, and given that adding a 280 millimeter all in one, it improved the thermals. I mean, just adding an all in one cooler and giving it a little bit more voltage and just letting it do it itself, that will make a pretty decent improvement. It's nothing earth shattering, but like 1 or 2 FPS in 1080p games and like 2 or 3 FPS in 1440p games, that's maybe margin of error though. And just doing that will help it some, but is that worth $100? Like, is that extra performance bump worth $100? I don't think so. The coolers in these boxes are surprisingly good. I mean, when is the last time that you got a CPU cooler in the box that was actually decent? I mean, it's like over 10 years ago.
Yeah, those Intel coolers were garbage. Someone said, I'll never buy a day one CPU after 1600 or whatever they had. So we actually talked about that. If you missed that part, when we did Zen, I remember we threw away like, what, 3-4 videos?
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, let's do a video about this. It's broken. BIOS update. Okay, it's fixed. BIOS update. Okay, it's fixed. And this has not been the case for, of course, it's only been, we've had it for how long?
A week.
Like a week. So it's not been as long, but it does seem like the growing pains are not nearly as bad. So if you get a bad taste in your mouth from that, it's probably better.
Yeah, I would say that this incremental refresh is not a lot has changed. And so a lot of the day one issues aren't there. There are definitely some BIOS issues still. And there are definitely some like platform setup issues, but it's not really they're sort of on the edge cases. So like one of the issues I ran into was combining NVMe RAID and standalone NVMe, and that's a BIOS issue probably, or maybe a driver issue, and it will be fixed. And it doesn't happen in every case. It just happens in some weird edge cases.
Peely Pally gives us $2 and
€2.
Oh wow, fancy. There was a good question there, and I was thinking about it, but then it went out of my head when I saw the donation.
No, let's go up.
Oh, 1440p. It does seem like 1440p is the resolution you want to game at with these CPUs if you got the video card for it.
Yeah, the benchmarks are really kind of odd. Like in the first gen Ryzen, I would say that there were benchmark anomalies, and we actually have a separate video just on that, and we'll talk more about it in that video. So look for that. But the performance anomalies are basically gone at this point. Like that with the tweaked latencies and whatever they did to Infinity Fabric, it's a shockingly good gaming experience. And so for like 1080p and 1440p, it is basically at parity with Intel. Like the 8700K is still a crazy insane chip. Don't throw out an 8700K or even a 7700 or even a 6700 to like build a new gaming machine. But if you want to go from 4 to 8 cores, the power of the 2700X just makes me giggle. Christian Nonkin asks thermal throttling and temp offset on the X model. So yeah, the temperature reported by the 2700X is higher than it really is, and that is again to ramp the fans and keep the CPU as cool as possible. Because when the CPU does need to boost in cooling, the cooler can't respond quickly enough. Like the time that it takes to go from like 200 RPM to like 1000 RPM is, let's say, a half a second. And that is too slow because the CPU will already be producing, it's got to have the thermal headroom, which is why it has the offset. We thought that was too complicated to go into for the sort of this launch day video. But the X at 105 watts does have the offset. But the cooler included with it has direct heat pipe cooling. And so if you have an aftermarket cooler, it will throttle less, and just automatically without changing anything else, you will get slightly better performance. But is it like $100 better performance? I don't think so. Anybody else have any questions? Anything? We're gonna get back to benchmarking. Oh my gosh! Woo! I'm sure there's gonna be tons and tons of good launch day coverage. I mean, like Steve at Hardware Unboxed is the benchmarking king, so he's going to have like probably 200 or 300 benchmarks. I want to automate it with a script, but that's actually harder than it seems. I'm using some chocolatey stuff right now, but it's not the performance is not not consistent. So if there are any PowerShell gurus in the audience, hit me up on the forum at Level 1 Text, because we need to build some PowerShell benchmarks, or some PowerShell scripts to do benchmarks automatically and install games with Steam CMD and run them with the dash benchmark command, and then open source that stuff, because goodness gracious, great balls of fire, it is crazy. I have an 1800X. Is it worth it? No. Next question. Dan R. Hansen says, "Notice me."
Don't feed that.
I knew you were going to do that.
How many cats per second? That's more of a GPU measurement.
Any other questions? It looks like it's all just repeats. You guys will have to rewatch the stream. We've covered all of that. Adam W, $2, 4790K to 2700X for gaming? Yes. Well, what's your overclock on the 4790? I think that's probably a yes, though. $5 for the hype jar. I also have the same shirt.
A man with taste.
Did I just hear open source? I'm happy to report that I'll give you a teaser. This is going to be on the Linux channel later, but Fedora 27, basically everything works out of the box on the MSI Gaming M7 and the Crosshair Hero 7. Let me grab those boards.
We already covered OMMU. Well, we didn't cover it, but there's going to be a separate video about that, so just stay tuned for that. These are both video cards over here. Can you play Fortnite on Ryzen 2? Only if you give up your self-respect.
This is the X470 Gaming M7 AC. This one's from MSI. This is a nice board. It's got two M.2, 2x16. One through the chipset that can do SLI and a HEMIC 2. This is one of the two motherboards that we use for testing. We've got at least one more, probably two more on the way. So we should have a complete lineup of AM4 motherboards. The big thing with the AM4 motherboards this time around is that the vendors, like, you know, Asus and MSI, these are really high-end boards. These are really, really good boards in terms of engineering and power design and that kind of thing. So I feel like that the vendors are sort of taking Ryzen more seriously now. Maybe. Like, wow, people are actually going to spend money on nice motherboards.
If I'm just buying the parts now, is it better to pick up a 1600 for 150 or a 2600? Is it worth the extra $50? Depends on the board, I think.
2600. I would probably go for the 2600.
I mean, if you're getting the 470 board, you're going to get those new features.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice.
Now you will get the XFR2, I think, on all the AM4 platforms. So just not some of the overclocking and the memory stability. Just in informal testing, like really quickly testing the new 2000 series CPUs on the X370 boards to try to get the same memory speeds. I did not have super good luck with that. I got 3200, but like the 3400, 3600, 3866, no. 3866 on AM4 is just mind-blowing.
Too Good donated $2.
Thank you.
Don't get upset, Too Good. You got to wait for a break in the action for the shout-outs for the donation.
4K streaming. I think this is 1440p, isn't it? Or do you mean how is it for 4K
I think they're
streaming?
saying, will we do 4K streaming? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what.
Or is the CPU good for 4K streaming? Damn you and your ambiguity.
We're not going to 4K stream. You probably could, but you wouldn't be like ultra quality probably.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work for the CPU. I mean, you might be able to.
Questions about the boiler snake. It was a little chilly this morning. I have a feeling the boiler snake is off.
It is.
Yeah. We may have seen the last of him for the year. So
the last time you said that, it was winter for 2 more weeks.
Yeah, it snowed after that. But I mean, fingers crossed. I love the boiler snake, but I am tired of this roller coaster weather.
We're the funniest guys in tech. I think there's a lot of people that would disagree with you. Might be maybe the try hardiest in tech. Killimaku is like ripped my sub box. You missed my donation, guys. Who was that? Oimada. Oimada. Sorry.
We did legitimately miss now. It's too good.
Nori Rivera and Adam W.
Yeah, we got those. Maybe that's it that just popped up. Oh, there it is. Not hype enough.
Not hype enough. 271.
Is that your donation to the hype jar?
That's E. I'm so sorry.
No, there's two more.
Oh, Andros. Hey, it's the free candy guy. Hey from Norway again. Hope you guys are ready for new food history lesson. Look for a nice box in the mail.
Please tell me there's no more of that salt candy in there. For the love of God.
Oh, we've got some new interns though. That could be a good experiment.
And that's the... Is that the Cronin? Their money? I know we figured out at one point what the conversion was, but I've forgotten. But there's one more.
It's 100 and okay. Thank you, Ornolly.
It's probably like $10.
Sorry. Ollie, Andy.
Would you ever accept cryptocurrencies? We have not set up for that. I mean, we probably would, but we just haven't gotten around to it.
It's Brendan again from the beginning of the thing. He already gave us that's a total of $4. Yeah, we probably should take cryptocurrency because everybody's got cryptocurrency, right? I mean, that's the thing.
I'm a broke college student. Should I buy this with my college debt? Well, I mean, if you don't have a computer, maybe. But
the garbage computers, man.
Yeah, you should go to your university and find out when they're getting rid of their computers, or whoever's in charge of that, and gain their trust and get something cheap.
Go watch our video on that. We literally did a video on like how to dumpster dive properly, and the comments there are just littered with people that called their university IT department to ask when the surplus auction was, and they're like, "Hey, bro, I picked up an E5, a Xeon E5 1640 for like $200 with 64 gigs of RAM, and you put a good video card in that, and that will game all day long." My landlord won't accept crypto.
It's volatile. Will there ever be a level 1 coin? Probably not.
Can you RAID 0 M.2 on the X470 chipset? You can. You absolutely can. And we talked about that earlier in the video. The Crosshair Hero is set up especially well to be able to do that because you can use some of the PCIe lanes from the graphics card to have NVMe lanes that are PCI Express 3.0, because otherwise you're still going through the X470 chipset, so you have PCI Express 3.0 and 2.0, but you can still do RAID 0. I'm actually, in some of our testing, we actually did RAID 0 NVMe, and we're going to have a setup video, like how to set it up. That might be like a Saturday or next week kind of thing, but how to set up NVMe RAID 0 on the Crosshair Hero 7.
That was a good question. Will I experience the latency improvements on a B350? That's the CPU cache itself.
Yes. So you will, but our experience so far has been a little hit and miss in terms of the improved memory speed. So if you can run your memory faster, you're going to benefit from that as well. And B350, 2933, maybe 3200, maybe. 2933 has been pretty attainable on the X370 boards we've tested so far.
Wi-Fi Vom Franman. Wow,
Wow.
that's a hard username to pronounce.
Kelmore's here. Hey, Kelmore, how's it going? Got bad news for you, Kelmore. Suspend and resume is not great on Linux. It works pretty well on Windows, but sleep and resume, not so much on Linux. Still a little problematic. Brad Morris is like, hey, how's your contention going? We did a video on that. It's going to be amazing. Brad's the guy that helped with the latency testing and looking at the Firestrike benchmarks and that sort of thing. With this and, or no, I'm sorry, not with that. With the MSI, this 1080 Ti is nuts. And the M7, we get almost 25,000 in Firestrike, which is pretty nuts. And that's with the stock cooler, and a very, very slight overclock. The GPU is crazy overclocked, but a very, very slight overclock. It's almost 25,000 in Firestrike, which is nuts.
We test X470 motherboards with first gen Ryzen CPUs. Maybe if we get desperate for content.
Yeah, we did some just quickie testing to make sure that it worked, but we didn't think anybody would be interested in a dedicated video for that.
That, like, what situation would you be in that you, because you're buying a motherboard that has features that you're going to put an old CPU in, and you can spend on average of what, like $50 to get the new one?
Yeah.
Just spend the $50.
Are these CPUs more power efficient? Yes, very much so. You can get 4.1 gigahertz and 65 watts now. 65 watt TDP. I mean, it's going to burst, so it's not really 65 watt, okay? But yeah, they're more power efficient. Interestingly, they're more power efficient than the low power process. Something ain't right somewhere. That doesn't make sense. It's like the low power process from the first generation versus the leading performance process, and the leading performance process has more power efficiency than the low power process.
I think chat's running out of steam.
Chat, I think, has run out of steam. If you have any other questions, there is a frequently asked questions forum on the Level 1 Tech's website, and we will have some other Zen coverage launch stuff soon, and it should be good. The results are the results online yet? The full results of our latency testing and other stuff is not online. It's probably going to be a few days for that because we've got more testing to do. Ugh. We only have these things for like a week, so not really a lot. But the first video on that is going to talk mainly about the GTA 5 engine and the latency improvements, because GTA 5 is a terrible game to benchmark with, but I know the engine well because I've been inside the engine. I understand how it works. GTA is also both CPU and GPU intensive, and it's very similar to Firestrike in that regard. So
Yellow Hippo gives us, is that Hong Kong $25?
I believe so. So thank you, Yellow Hippo.
It's a cool variety of currency we're getting today.
When is the ECC video coming out? Maybe today, probably this weekend. It'll be a quick and dirty one. Are they soldered? Yes, indeed, they are soldered. AMD in their press release was like, look, we know that like we could not solder this, but we're going to solder it because of the fans. I thought that was interesting. Woo. Yeah, it's Ryzen 2, but it's Zen Plus. So it's not, there's a Zen 2 that's coming in the next thing is going to be new microarchitecture, but this is Zen Plus. So it's a little confusing because it's like, it's Ryzen 2. It's like, no, it's second gen Ryzen, which is Zen Plus. It's an incremental improvement over Zen. Zen 2 will be the next thing that comes out in a year to 18 months.
We got $5 from Fernando NDM. Hey guys, some Brazilian rublos for you. We do Cubes OS video with Ryzen 2.
I really like Cubes. I like the idea of Cubes, so I will definitely try it and take a look. I was sort of delighted that basically everything worked on Linux, even the Turbo Boost stuff on existing, the very latest, 4.16 kernels on Fedora 27. So, woo! That's not been my experience with the Ryzen 5 plus Vega on Linux. That is not ready yet.
The questions have gone completely off the rails. This is about Zen Plus.
All right, I think we could probably call it. It's like the chat was on life support for a while, and now it's like it's just time to pull the plug and just. Oh, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Please do like this video. It seems to help the analytics, the engagement, and hit the bell to subscribe and all this kind of notice things, because YouTube is just awful. We should build a website where you could sign up on the website and it does push notices, and its whole purpose in life is to just notify you about things that go live on any video anywhere on YouTube or anything. Just a notifier website where it's just, how would you like to be notified? Email, push notification, other push notification, text message, whatever. It's like, what would you like to be notified about? It's like new videos on this channel, this channel, this channel, this channel, this channel. And then we don't have to rely on YouTube's shitty infrastructure to do that. Guarantee you there's going to be people in the comments that's like, I'm subscribed to you guys and I didn't get a notice that you guys were live. WTF. Burp, burp. All right. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for hanging out.
Now remember, if you got here late and you're asking all these questions, the first 15 minutes, that's where the question answers are.
Definitely rewatch. So, cool. See you guys.